Reboot it!
Hey everyone, I'm Ron Swallow, and welcome to Reboot Rewind, the official after show for Reboot It. Today we're diving into our trippiest episode yet, the Transformers. Let's talk about how this one came about, guys.
Ooh, baby. How do we even have this conversation?
Well, dude, Transformers has been looming over us for a while. I'll just start out saying that. It's been part of the discourse for quite a while.
I'll be completely honest with you. I pushed for this one to be our alternate universe episode where we went to the Bizarroverse because I was not prepared to have a productive conversation about Transformers without some kind of gimmick to hang our hats on. Just because I hate to be that guy, because I feel like I was a little bit that guy last week with X-Men, but I just don't get what people like about Transformers. And like, I was so happy that we could add a little extra something to this episode with the Do Crew. That when we actually got to the point of saying, like, all right, we're going to do this Do Crew episode, what are we going to do? I was Johnny on the spot with that Transformers suggestion. I was like, yep, here's the one where we're going to finally do Transformers.
I'm trying to remember how the Do Crew thing even came about. We had joked about it a lot. And then once we did X-Men, I mean, you guys saw last week, that was just like 5 of the 100 comments of people just, I think we were all just like so fed up with the comments of X-Men that if the X-Men one hadn't happened, I don't know if Do Crew would have made an appearance this season, but we all just were, we were all jumping in, responding to comments. We were all texting each other just like, what is happening? And then I think it was just like, we have to show these people what we see when we read this.
Yeah, I think that was the part that was lost on a lot of people, was that like a lot of the people that were super mad at the Do Crew were mad because they were the Do Crew. You know what I mean? And it was almost like when you turn away from something embarrassing on a television or something, you have to distance yourself from it. So you just start being like, I didn't like that Do Crew bit. Yeah, you didn't like it. You didn't like looking in the mirror.
I mean, it's just like whenever a lady complains about men in general, and then some guy takes it personally. And let me tell you a secret. If you take that personally, it's because the complaint that lady had is you. I never take it personally because I'm not that guy. I never have to take things like that personally.
I was in the live chat when this one premiered, and I remember about a few minutes into the Do Crew opening, people were just like, how long is this going to go? I'm like, oh, it's pretty terrible, right? When fans like this dictate how a movie goes, like, isn't this like just being so freaking passive aggressive and condescending? And the thing is, like, we tried to be entertaining, and I think it's entertaining, but we also had to, I feel like, put our foot down and be like, enough. Like, this is, if you're going to act like a baby, this is what it's going to look like. So when we finally reverted to our normal self, it's like, all right, now, everybody, it was like a timeout in a weird way.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth pointing out, too, that like the vast majority of feedback we get on all of our episodes is very positive.
Yes.
And we genuinely like the community of people that we've sort of built here. That said, the Do Crew also took place, you have to realize, in a post-Snyder cut, right in the middle of people wrestling with what is WandaVision, or maybe what is the Winter Soldier. I forget exactly what the timing was. I think we were actually right in the fallout of WandaVision, in the middle of the Winter Soldier, as we were doing that episode. And so this whole idea of fan theories and fan critiques and the power of fan movements had just reached its ludicrous boiling point. And, we've all weighed in on this on other episodes of this show and others, but like whatever was in the air was just as much about things that had nothing to do with what we do here on Rebooted as it did have something to do with what we do here on Rebooted. I just think we hit an inflection point that what started as a joke about Ron's evil doppelganger being called Don Spitz as opposed to Ron Swallow culminated in us, again, being able to sort of take this multi-leveled satirical approach where it's like, yeah, we're rebooting Transformers, but we're also doing a very incisive look at the reality of doing IP development in Hollywood.
What I did find that was interesting was when we were doing we didn't plan out so much. It was like, let's just riff for however long and then we'll change. That was as much like direction as we gave ourselves. And I feel like we naturally, just because like we still had to put on a show, we're trying to at least put out something at the beginning that was like a thought starter. It's really hard to come up with anything when you're just like being on the other side of it. It's like really hard to create something when you're just like, well, what about the color? Well, what about like which Transformers are we going to use? My brain was fighting the instinct to be like, use for what? We haven't talked about anything. Like, it was very hard to like suppress and get in that other mindset. And which is why, like, even by the end, I was like, I think you can see it. One of us, I don't even remember who anymore, pushed for at least the suggestion of like, well, it should all be a fight scene. I was like, all right, at least there's one concrete thing we could take out of this. Cause it's like, it's just really hard to be that bad.
Well, you know, and what's funny is that the all for a fight scene thing is literally what some people would like. Because earlier Bill was saying, I just don't get why you guys like Transformers. But Bill, people like Transformers because what if your car turned into a robot that could punch another car that turned into a robot? How cool would that shit be?
I'd buy a new car personally, but that's just me.
I feel like I said the exact same thing at Knight Rider and got a lot of eye rolls. But here it's like totally fine to not get it.
I've always been up. First of all, Knight Rider has a very important sort of human connection in his partnership with Michael Knight.
So
but I was not the one. I'm just saying I was not the one who was down on you about your Knight Rider take.
By the way, I think Bumblebee is what made doing a reboot it for Transformers very difficult. Was that I think Bumblebee would be very much in tune with something that we would come up with. You know, let's take it back to the 80s and let's do all this other fun stuff. So like it's always hard to do a reboot it when the movie that's already been out is really good. We kind of did the same thing with Mask of Zorro, where Ed and I watched Mask of Zorro before we did the Zorro reboot. We're like, damn, that's probably what we would have done if we had done a Zorro reboot. So Transformers just felt like when we were starting, we had very little options just because they ran that thing into the ground.
Oh so what you're saying is that the Do Crew helped.
I think that's the wrong takeaway, but
I will say this. One of the things that we 100% did not discuss, and I both felt was inevitable, but I was also really happy when it happened, was that as the Do Crew, we very quickly got into interpersonal conflicts with each other. Right? Yeah. We started with this idea of like, we're going to make a kick-ass Transformers movie, and then just because this is the reality, we very much got into gatekeeping and conflicting visions and people saying, oh, we're going to be really fruitful. Just listen to my idea that has nothing, or we're going to be very faithful. Listen to my idea that has nothing to do with what came before. But no, it's faithful, but you've never heard it before. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff that we actually see happening in these fan conversations. I love that we were able to distill it into like that 12-minute segment.
Yeah, it was a good time. Well, I think this is a good moment to get to the pitch. So let's see producer Bill bring it back.
We are telling a 4-hour action epic inspired by the likes of Braveheart, Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandments, and Gladiator, starring giant fighting robots, baby. From the beginning, we see the creation of Cybertron, and from Cybertron, the creation of its bastard offspring, Unicron. And with Unicron comes the religious conviction that cybernetic intelligence is the dominant species of the universe, and they will now spread across all planets to evolve technology to replace organic life. And the Autobots are the faction that do not want to be part of this war. So in hour one, We get the takeover of Cybertron by the Decepticons and Unicron, and the flight of Optimus and the Autobots. Kind, gentle farmer Optimus Prime. Hour 2, they have established a secret society amongst an alien civilization. We get to see how Transformers integrate to totally alien technology until the Decepticons arrive and raze the planet to the ground. Now the Autobots flee again, and leading up to our intermission, they land on Earth, where they believe that they are finally free of the Decepticons. From the intermission, we fast forward. Optimus Prime is now allied with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves as an academic scientist couple who are teaching Optimus Prime a new way of thinking about his own biology, about his own mission. And not a moment too soon, because wouldn't you know it, the Decepticons have caught up. And in a globe-spanning battle, we see Optimus putting the lessons of Keanu and Sandy to work. We perhaps see some sort of early version of Robotech / Macross, where humans are piloting robots. And then, after Keanu and Sandra Bullock heroically sacrifice themselves to send the Autobots back to Cybertron, we see Optimus and the Autobots activate Cybertron to transform the planet into a giant fighting robot to be piloted by Transformers, and having a space battle with a transformed Unicron. And so we have planet-scale robots fighting each other, and at the end, Optimus heroically dies at the hands of Megatron. Megatron also dies. We haven't quite figured that out. Setting up Hot Rod, who has been our sidekick character through all of this crazy action, to take up the mantle, much like, I forget Moses' sidekick in the Ten Commandments. But guys, we are 100% referencing old epics. That is the pitch. Mr. Evans, what do you think? Did I miss anything, guys? Did I miss anything?
Yep, that's right.
I still can't believe, by the way, can we just say, like, hats off to Bill, because we go in so many directions in the course of an hour-and-a-half episode, and I am stunned at the end that you can deliver a concise summary every single episode. I couldn't do it. There's no way. I would forget half of it.
Honestly, this is both what makes me valuable, but also like my own personal shortcoming when it comes to being in a writer's room. I can't think about this stuff if I can't keep it straight in my head, which I think makes it both difficult for me to be as off the cuff as I would like, just because I don't have it in me to be like, hey, this has nothing to do with what anybody's been talking about at all, but wouldn't this be cool? Like, I'm never that guy. But I am the guy who can bring structure and pathos to all the crazy shit that other people are throwing out. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I'm the throw crazy shit out guy. That's me. That's what I do. So we, by the way, we pitched that to legendary producer Robert Evans, which I thought was a great pick for the Do Crew and the alternate universe thing. I thought that was fun. Looking back, did we actually pull off making a Transformers movie that people would actually want to see?
Oh, okay, I'll go first. I have been thinking about this a lot, and this is my vision. It is like a tailgate movie. It's the thing that brought the kids back to the theaters. That's what they're going to talk about it as. It's got a freaking intermission. It's a party complex. This whole Transformers entity, because they can only play it a certain amount of times a day. So we're going to take over about 2-3 theaters, baby. You know how we do. We muscle in with that Hasbro money. We set about 2 or 3 theaters, stagger them some bitches from early in the morning till late at night. And that whole section of the movie theater is a party, man. There's popcorn all on the floor. You step in there, you might get knifed. It's wild in there because it's Rocky Horror Picture Show for people coming to watch the second part because they like the animal part and they like the Keanu Reeves stuff. And certain people are going to like the just strictly Robo stuff. So they're going to come for the early part. You know what I mean? There's going to be such a party culture around this movie because it has an intermission. It's so long. It's like a slog. You got to get through it, go fill up your dew again to go watch the second half. It's got a tailgate culture like a football game, this movie, if it were to be made.
I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I support that. I just felt one of the things I liked when here listening to producer Bill bring it back is just that I think we made an interesting. I think we gave more, I guess, gravitas, I guess might be the word, for the bad guys, as well as the good guys kind of having to go on a little bit, you know how I love them, a character arc to find out where their weaknesses lied as well. So and then we still get great battle scenes out of that whole thing while we did that.
I mean, much to the chagrin of the Do crew and that ilk, I think what makes the story so interesting, to me at least, is that you could give that whole speech and never mention the word robot once, and it still 100% works. And I think that's kind of why the story is so good, was because we didn't try to make a Transformers movie. We just made a really good story. We very much like the Ten Commandments. There's a lot of like biblical allegories to it, and it just so happens, if you peek under the curtain, that it's a robot story. It's like I always said one of the coolest pieces of merchandise I've ever kept was when they sent out PGA screeners for The Dark Knight Rises. There was not a single mention of Batman anywhere on the packaging. There was not a Batman imagery. The word Batman was not in the description. Christian Bale was only credited as Bruce Wayne. I was like, that's cool. Like, it's cool that this is just a story of a guy and the Batman is very secondary. Whereas like in our Transformer story, like this is a multi-generational story of like the Prime legacy. And it just so happens coincidentally that it's about robots.
Yeah. One thing I sort of love about this is, if you think about it, Charlton Heston movies were essentially like blockbusters before the age of blockbusters, right? Everything from the Ten Commandments to Planet of the Apes. And I really see this movie as being written as if every line of dialogue was delivered by Charlton Heston. You know what I mean? Like, I guess to Ed's point and to Billy's point, like I would want this movie to be written with the most high-handed, preachy, philosophical monologues. Like, bring back 1950s style blockbuster writing specifically for this movie, and just see if you could like get people to buy in on a totally different level. You know what I mean? Take a big swing. How do you make this thing feel weird and fresh? And is it supposed to be funny, or isn't it like water cooler worthy for a 16-year-old today? And I think there's something to like, look, lean all the way. This is Ben-Hur. This is the Ten Commandments. Like everything is just dripping with so much theatricality that you can't look away, which weirdly, Ed, you brought up Rocky Horror Picture Show, is also sort of that movie's MO. Like, I think there's something to it. Can you reintroduce camp via Transformers, but actually marry it with like $200 million special effects? I think it'd be kind of awesome.
I concur. Fine, sir. Well, it feels like we all thought it was pretty good. Let's see what some of the comments had to say. We got Colby coming up. That was a trip. I wonder if there was more Do Crew that was left on the cutting room floor, quote unquote.
You know, I edited this one, but I handed it over to Bill because the first cut of the Do Crew I felt was like really, I couldn't get a feel for it. So we went for, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes with the idea that we would try to at least get something workable out of it. But I don't know, Bill, you tell me how much did you cut out? Because I don't even remember anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there was a decent amount. I think including the recap at the beginning of the episode and the produced open and the Robert Evans stuff, it was about 15 minutes, might have been a little less than 15 minutes before we reverted back to our true selves permanently. And I think we probably recorded 25, 30-ish minutes worth of stuff. So I'd conservatively say we chopped it in half. That said, I mean, the biggest thing about editing that, I had a ton of fun editing that. Like it was trying to find sort of a story that also didn't drag, because such is the reality with improv, especially when you're doing character-based improv. You have a tendency to be a little redundant. It's like you find the stuff that works and you go back to the well like 3-4 times.
Yeah.
That was most of what I cut out, was just us sort of repeating ourselves in different ways, trying to find the dynamic. I think, the stuff that I really tried to keep in there, and maybe more than I should have, was sort of the interesting character-based conflicts that, like, the best part of that entire session for me was when Ed said to Billy, after Billy complained that we didn't want to add any authentically Japanese stuff into the pitch, Ed goes, "You are straight xenophobe."
Okay? Which, now that everyone's seen the gag reel, they know that we had to do that a couple times because it just was too funny each time. There was a lot of breaking character because when you put together a gag reel for Reboot It, I think people don't realize, maybe they do if they watch the live ones, like, we don't really cut anything out of these episodes. Like, the only time that we cut something is if, like, someone's internet messes up and we need to get it clean, or like someone's audio drops. Like, we don't really cut for content. So there's not a lot of bloopers, but when you have 4 crazy characters and we're all trying to figure out what our characters are, and then Ed just drops xenophobe, and it was just I couldn't hold it in. It was too funny.
Oh, dude, my character was very offended at that because they were very much into the Japanese aspect. I mean, I think that character made a suggestion earlier that we should just call him Gunman and Robo Truck and stuff like
right.
that. And
I felt icky saying, like, go back to Shanghai. I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry.
It was so
Billy.
beautifully wrong, though. It was like,
But it was your character.
It was.
I had a problem. I had a problem saying much of anything. I don't know if you guys noticed, but like, I couldn't think of anything to say, frankly. I didn't do a great job because I was like, man, what's the douchiest thing I could think? I've got this collar popped and I got my chest showing and I'm wearing this dumb hat. What do I say that's really douchey? And then I just kept thinking, what's douchey? What's a douchey? And then I couldn't think of anything douchey to say. And I tried. I think I came up with a few dumb things. But
the effort is appreciated. That I will say, Ron, I wanted to keep you in the edit. Trying to keep you present was difficult because I think me, Ed, and Billy just got on such a run that we steamrolled you a little bit. But that's good to hear that you were also sort of struggling to figure out what was going on, because I felt kind of bad that, like, oh man, we didn't really give Ron space to do much of anything.
I would have loved if we couldn't show it very well, but I would have loved if you had like stopped and did like 10 push-ups or something. I don't know. Just try to be. It's tough. It honestly is tough. Like one person caught the reference, but it's like I don't know what character to do. I literally just did the Californians from SNL. Like that's exactly what it is.
I totally was mimicking. Some might even say mocking. Like 2 different people that I actually know who will definitely remain nameless. But I essentially just tried to adopt the mannerisms and sort of tone of some people that I've actually worked with.
And you were like Point Break Keanu. I'm FBI agent.
You know what? Because I love how he kept trying to suggest that we make Transformers into Point Break. He just kept being like, what if he went undercover and became like a robot bank robber?
Guys, there is some good subtle comedy in this between Billy like rejecting Japanese culture by telling somebody to go back to China, and then Ed just trying to wedge in an undercover Transformer going undercover with bank robbers. There's a lot to this.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll release the ultra director's cut of that episode.
The Snyder cut.
The Snyder cut of that.
I mean, maybe someday the Do Crew will make another appearance. Who's to say?
I don't know.
Who's to say?
Oh God, I hope.
I'm not sure we know where they are or they know where they are right now. So who knows?
You know what's funny is, aren't I the guy who made the suggestion that it just be a 4-hour fight scene? I can't remember, but I think Don Spitz was like coming up and it's just like, and then I think I was just like, you know what? It just needs to be like a fight scene the whole time or something like that. And then you were
I think
like,
so, yeah.
And then you were like, yes, you got it, you know, and then.
I think that's literally me almost breaking character. Like, finally, we hit something that we can use later on.
Yeah, I mean, which is funny because I know as we're going to get into the comments, there are people who kind of like were talking about the fact that the Do crew had such an influence on the real crew that it made this worse. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think it was one of those, I mentioned Patrice O'Neill a lot, but like he would dig himself a hole and then get out. You know what I mean? And we dug ourselves a hole and we got out. That's I don't know. That's a feat and it's good.
Well, and isn't this, I mean, we've talked about this before, but isn't that kind of what happens sometimes? Like producers are going to be like, this is what I need. I need this to be a 4-hour fight scene. So make it happen and do it the way you do it. But it's got to be a 4-hour fight scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think to Ed's point, one of the things that was really interesting about the way we approached this, and Billy, I think you hit on this, we did not pre-plan anything. Like all we knew was that somewhere around the 20-minute mark, the Do crew would phase back to being the real crew, the Reboot crew. And the Reboot crew would have to just run with whatever the Do crew came up with because Robert Evans was going to love it. And we didn't know what the Do crew was going to come up with, and we didn't know when we were going to stop ourselves. And so to Ed's point, we really did sort of jump off the cliff, jumped out of the plane without a parachute is what I will say.
Which, by the way, it didn't last very long, but it was floated a while ago when we first said this, that we do the whole episode as the Do crew.
I'm glad we didn't do that.
I remember, I don't think we could have. I was like, man, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but it's like, I wouldn't watch a whole episode of this. That's why the cut that I did of the Do crew was much shorter than what ended up being put in. I think I halved whatever you did, and I was like, this still feels too long. Luckily, the way that you did it, I think you finessed it a little bit better than I did, but I was just too worried that like, oh man, no one's going to care and they're going to click out thinking this the whole episode, but it's what it is.
The only thing I'll say is you got to trust the material. You can't edit scared. You know what I mean? That's just something I learned a long time ago. You never edit scared. Trust your material.
Yeah, I'm just learning that. Let's get into another comment. We got Jam Moi. I've been worried about you guys doing Transformers, as it's the only property for which I can legit say I'm in the fandom. That said, my watchword is originality, and the actual franchise is so convoluted and bogged down with repetitive lore, your take is a nice change. My only issue, and I guess it's fundamental, but please don't take this as a slight because the concept rocks, is that it feels too big. This could be a series in itself. Maybe it's the memory of my physical reaction to the nonstop intensity of the Infinity War, but breathing room is a must. Maybe there's time to slow down a little with the human interaction, I guess. I like big swings. This is the biggest swing since Tom Scioli's G.I. Joe versus Transformers comic, recommended for batshitness. I think I said that guy's name wrong, but
it's Tom Scioli. Yeah.
I totally hear that. You know, I think it's purposefully too big, but also like, you know, this is a show. We did have to work within the constraint of, you know, it's a 4-hour runtime. That's what we're gonna have to do. But I kind of think like ultimately that comes down to there are some 90-minute movies that feel like 3 hours, and then 3-hour movies that feel like 25 minutes. And you're like, how is this over already? So I think ultimately it would be up to like the execution. If by the intermission you felt like, you know, like things were progressing and you know, the pace was correct. But I could see how just listening to us talk, it could feel like there's no way you could accomplish all of that in 4 hours. But with a skillful hand, I think you could.
Oh, I definitely think you could. I mean, I honestly think that everything we threw out there, I think it'd be stretching to do it in 4 hours. Zack Snyder might not think it'd be stretching, but I would.
He would need that 8 hours.
Yeah. All I'll say is maybe it's the memory of my physical reaction to the nonstop intensity of Infinity War. What does that mean? Is that a slight on Infinity War is the best movie that Marvel has ever made for that exact reason. What are you talking about, Jam? Like this is, let me just say, this is a beautiful comment. This is a very nice comment. We appreciate it. Jam, why you've been listening for a while. I have no problem with you. But what the hell are you talking about? You think Infinity War suffers for not having enough breathing room?
I don't want to speak for Jamwa, but I think maybe what Jamwa was getting at was Infinity War has such a sense of urgency, like a rapid sense of urgency, that you are kind of exhausted by the time it's over because you're just like on the edge of your seat, literally from the very first minute where they're just killing everybody. So maybe he was just worried that we would have that kind of intense Infinity War intensity for 4 hours. Like, I don't know if I could watch 4 hours of Infinity War level stuff, because by the end I would just be like, I literally, like, my heart can't take this anymore.
Well, I mean, but again, we have him being a farmer, and you know what the saddest part about it? He's a data miner. Of course he is. He's farmer. Farm what? They don't.
I never thought about that until right now. It's like, yeah, what does he? What crops grow on Cybertron?
Did you just say that the Transformers are collecting bitcoins?
Dude, the Transformers eat crypto for breakfast. So the bottom line is, so that part, establishing a pastoral existence on Cybertron is the first thing that literally has to happen, because that leads to the 4-hour fight scene, which is his land being impinged upon and him and his ragtag group having to escape basically assimilation by this Unicron thing. He's got to till the fields for about 10 minutes or 10 seconds, and then boom, you know what I'm saying? Something has to start out calm. So we have some times of chilling out. The Beast Wars period up to the present day, there's a chilling period, and there's a them being Keanu and Sandy taking over the movie for a little second to discover the Transformers a little bit. There's times to chill out. It's not quite Kill Bill-esque. With the second movie being like a big break, which I don't like. I would love for Kill Bill have been a rock and roller for 4 hours like this thing. I would have loved that.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I guess I just don't get what people get out of, like, oh, let's just slow this down and let it breathe. Like, there are times where that's appropriate. Sergio Leone movies, Kurosawa movies, sure, I get it. But if you're gonna tell me an action story, let it be an action story. Like, the best version of this is you walk out feeling like you yourself have been in a physical fight. And further, why would you not want to feel that way walking out of a movie? I mean, that's what movies do. They allow you to feel stuff like that. Like, that is the apex of movie viewing, is to feel that way. So that's, if I'm reacting a little bit intensely to this comment, I just feel like, we want to do that to you. We want to take you for that ride. Don't tell us to do less of it. We will not.
Absolutely. So let's get to James over here. It's a shame this was tethered to the worst impulses from the start, but geez, you guys worked some magic polishing that turd. I'd certainly watch this one, but still a little disappointed we didn't get something more like your He-Man.
It's so interesting because He-Man, we got raked over the coals for not taking it seriously enough. And then now it's like, we'll go do that one again. I think with He-Man, it's all about, like, the story. If He-Man, if we had found a take on He-Man that maybe would have worked a little bit better to dive into, like, the serious take, I don't know, maybe we would have gone that way. But I also think, like, I don't know, this is just me personally, I don't think Transformers is as silly as He-Man is. Like, He-Man is just kind of on its face, like, very, very silly. So Transformers to me felt like, we were hamstrung a little bit with just like it has to be a 4-hour fight scene, but it could have been a comedic fight scene. But I don't know, it just felt kind of, as soon as, I don't remember who said it, but whoever said it, like, what if we take, like, the Gladiator approach? Like, I was like, that's kind of neat. Let's try that one. Like, you don't want to see us do the same gag over and over. Do you want us to take every 80s cartoon and just make it a comedy. Like, I don't think that
Right.
would work for everything, you know?
Right. That would make us these sort of like weird, kind of sub 21 Jump Street guys.
It'd
Help
make
me out.
us like Lord Miller Light, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Diet Lord Miller.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting because you got to walk a line of like things becoming a formula, because formulas can work. Like there's a reason formulas exist, but you can't become formulaic in every single thing you do. So, you know, if every single time, for instance, we have to do something kind of hard and then we mix it with another thing that's kind of hard to make it easy on us, that'll be a cop out. But doing it every once in a while brings out a cool gem. And
Can
I
I
think
also
He-Man,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think He-Man also did that. Like we were like, let's combine it with She-Ra. Let's add a little more interesting part. We thought about what might be happening to people who lived in a world where Skeletor and He-Man were fighting in their freaking places all the time at their house, at their apartment, basically. and we came up with something cool, you know. And I think we did the same thing with Transformers. We put these guys in an interesting position. We gave them all a little more like theme and reason behind the things they're doing, and I think that was a good idea.
The difference too is that with He-Man, for at least 3 of you guys, I'll exclude myself, there was a lot of love for He-Man and a lot of being able to separate yourself from your 8-year-old self, but still loving that property. So even when we were taking kind of shots at it, it came from a place of love. If we did this with Transformers, it would be bullying. Like the comedy would just be straight up just making fun of it instead of kind of like nostalgically, lovingly kind of, you know, making it humorous. I think maybe if we felt differently about Transformers, but it seemed like we all kind of went into it already with kind of this like kind of sense to it, which I think when you start to make that into a comedy, then it just becomes a roast as opposed to a comedy.
No, I absolutely concur. And just one thing I would add on to that is I think our approach with Transformers was, you're right, it's not as flimsy as, I mean, it is pretty flimsy, but their overall mythology is really simple if you pare it all the way down. That's one thing I really keyed on when bringing up the Unicron of it all, Unicron versus Cybertron as these titanic different ways to be a robotic creature. This type of way of being a robotic creature, kind of like Borg-like, kind of warlike. This type of way is just sort of like, just, hey, the trains are running and everything's fine, and we're just a wonderful society just doing our purpose. And I just think that war between like orderly chaos, but nobody has too much, or ultimate power and everybody has everything because we're a giant collective and will crush you. That was an intrinsic conflict that's interesting as hell. And it isn't just 2 factions fighting and ruining planets all throughout their time. It's greater than that. It's somebody trying to fight an oppressive regime and getting beat down after generation, and finally in the end winning with a great sacrifice from their great leader. That's what we did, and that's better.
Yeah.
Whether it's better or not, the only thing I have to add to any of that is the comedy in He-Man was character driven. Like all that goofiness was already inherently there. And a lot of it was predicated on like physical comedy, on things like, Channing Tatum turning into John Cena, and Skeletor sort of having a stomach turning reaction to torture, and they're having a fight scene and they don't care the walls that they're blowing through. I just don't know if that type of comedy would even translate to non-human characters, if I'm being honest. I think that a lot of that lives and dies on the basis that they are human and that you can get comedic performances out of human actors. I think if you're going to do a satirical comedy take on Transformers, I mean, that's a lot of heavy lifting in and of itself, just to figure out how do you make that work with essentially CGI cartoons? Like, what's the best version of comedy when that's the medium that you're working in? Medium is the message too on a lot of this stuff. Just worth keeping that in mind.
Well, but also just like it's like the Wall-E effect, right? When you really treat a robot as its own species and their own character, you get some magical stuff that happens. And in this movie, for like 2 straight hours, you only have robots as characters. You must accept that they're a real life form, and you must accept that their lives are serious things where they can lose them. They can, over the course of time, as we prepare and thin out the roster and we change over the roster, I mean, it's not just to sell toys. It's to show you that the human as in Transformer Autobot cost of this war is high. And we can show you that over a 4-hour runtime, we probably get 56 damn Transformers. You know what I mean? Because they're getting murked, dude. You know, and Optimus Prime is made even more of a hero because he's like, I keep surviving. You know, he keeps surviving World War II every like few years. I don't know. I love the gravitas of that, and I love that we went there because we really could have been juvenile and crapped all over it, and I'm glad that we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's get to Jim Jam. He said, while knowing Bill's views on Snyder, my favorite part of his movies is the operatic nature of them, which is why I pause with your director's choice. I think Ed might have been closer with Guillermo. Wouldn't someone with that grand, ambitiously unique visual style be better suited? I think Snyder might have been the perfect pick. The limited humans in this movie also eradicate his need for his problematic anti-humanist philosophy. You just have to make sure he doesn't make Megatron and the Decepticons the heroes with their strong man, we know how the universe is supposed to be run, you silly little aliens outlook. But also, he's big on individuality and not becoming part of a group, so he could embrace the Autobots in that regard. But I think he'd nail the planet fighting operatic nature of this with incredible visuals. But I seriously love this pitch. You guys are on fire this season. Cool.
Zack Snyder's dead to me. I honestly, here's where I'm at. This is just where I'm at. Zack Snyder is not a good director. Army of the Dead put the last nail in that coffin. I would not want to give him any big budget franchise. If I was a producer, I would not hire him. I don't want the headache that comes with his fan base. I don't think he's that talented. I got nothing for that guy. I'm Tony Stark in goddamn Endgame. Zip, zero, got nothing for you.
Well, and also, wait a minute. The guy who did Planet of the Apes, right? Or rather, Battle for the Planet. All the new Apes movies.
The new Batman movie director, Matt Reeves.
Yeah,
Matt Reeves.
But before that, he did those movies. I'm not.
Yeah,
crazy,
he did the Planet of the Apes movies.
All right, and what else did he do?
Cloverfield
was the one that did it for me, honestly, because it's just like once we get into the Sandy Bullock and Keanu Reeves section of the movie, I have literally never seen the human reaction to all that stuff. It's all Michael Bay characters are Transformers themselves. You understand what I'm saying? Like they're these pillars of power themselves, except in the first movie. After that, they're always these super soldiers who are just jumping around and dodging falling Transformers like it's nothing. You're just an Indiana Jones type with your wife in a cave, and a giant Constructicon comes out and causes a cave in. That's horrifying. And I think homeboy Matt Reeves could do that very well, because in Cloverfield, there were several shots where like your building is tilted because the monster came and slammed it down, and you're looking down Broadway and you see him turn around and come back and stomp for you. And he's a monster and he's this big, but you're over here seeing him as a real thing in relation to buildings and stuff. And you're getting more and more scared as it gets closer and closer and bigger. Transformers rendered with that eye. This is a slobber knocker, man. When they're fighting each other, it's Titanic. And when they're fighting around us, it's even more epic. And we get more epic as we go forward in this movie. Psh, this is great. I'm the biggest fan of this pitch, honestly. I think there ever could be.
I mean, if Zack Snyder was willing to be our cinematographer or our storyboard artist,
I don't want blurry Transformers.
But here's the thing: Zack Snyder, my one of my all-time favorite, just iconic moments of Batman happens in Batman v Superman, a film I actively dislike, which is when the police are looking around and they shine it up in the light and he looks like a giant demon monster and flies out the window. That's what Batman is to me. So this idea that like Zack Snyder doesn't visually tell interesting stories, like or at least like little iconic moments like that, I think that's just false. I think he could make some amazing Transformers visuals, but I'm with you on the sense of, but I don't want him near the story. So if he could literally just contribute to the visuals, I'd be fine.
I'm actually going to defend Bill on this, and I'm going to explain with a comic, with a comedian. It's going to sound weird, but roll with me here. To me, Zack Snyder is Dane Cook. When Dane Cook first came out on the scene, he was a pretty decent comic. He was funny, and he wasn't for everybody, but the people who liked him really, really liked Dane Cook. And then he became a mockery of himself. He became a copy of himself. So it literally looked like someone was doing a Dane Cook impression when it was Dane Cook doing comedy. And I think that's what Zack Snyder has started doing. He's bought into his own stuff. And I'm not saying he isn't good and hasn't done something like some iconic stuff. But I think now, like after watching Army of the Dead, I agree that the big thing he does is he grabs onto his own style and he almost mocked his own style, if that makes any sense at all. But that's kind of how I feel about him. Is he's
Look, I don't want to turn this into the Zack Snyder debate channel, but at the same time, like, okay, well, Wes Anderson's been doing that for 15 minutes, and you all suck him off to completion. Like, at least with Zack Snyder, like, if you're going to have an operatic visual, I'm not talking about directing the movie. I'm talking about if you let the guy come in and do your previs or have a say on your production design, or at least get you some cool Optimus-looking shots. Like, you'd be stupid to say no, because if you're going to come at me and say that Zack Snyder doesn't have like incredibly interesting and amazing visuals, then you're too far up your own ass about it. I'm sorry. That is 100% accurate. And look, I will concede I've not seen his newest Netflix movie, so I'm taking that out of the equation. I'm just saying, like, a movie that I don't even like has the best looking Batman moment ever committed to film. There are amazing shots in that movie that unfortunately just do not pair up to a great story. So do I think Zack Snyder could do some really interesting Transformer stuff? Absolutely he could, but I just don't think he could tackle the actual story that we're telling.
And you don't let him edit.
Well, it is 4 hours. We give him a break. It's 4 hours. He should be ready for that.
He could take 2.5 hours worth of material and make it 4 hours. He can make it 4:15 if you let him.
All right.
Can't defend him on that, but yeah.
Let's get to another comment. We got Daniel. Transformers is just not my jam. You guys had lemons and tried to make lemonade, but between being a property I don't care for and being hamstrung by the initial mirror universe pitch of a 4-hour-long battle with no human characters, this is one of my least favorite pitches. Although if Gareth Edwards directed it, I'd watch it anyways. But the episode as a whole was great, and probably the most and hardest I've laughed during an episode. The mirror universe versions of you killed me.
Oh, that's cool. I just want to say that's why the show is how it is. Because honestly, you're not going to like all the pitches because we're going to take some of your sacred cows and chop their necks off and make quarter pounders out of them. It's just going to be what it is. So you got to get your enjoyment where you can. And there's all sorts of tertiary stuff around the product that will give you, something, even if you don't like the thing. So that's the greatest comment ever to me. I love those type of comments because it means we're doing an entertaining product, not just making faux movies and just crutching up on that.
Yeah, I mean, part of the whole thing we're doing is to be entertaining. Like, that is, we're not on YouTube just to pretend to be producers. We're like here to have a good time and make people laugh, but also like practice that feel of coming up with a story idea and show that we're pretty smart. Like, we have great ideas. Mostly these three have great ideas, and every once in a while I'll throw something in there. But still, that's the whole point. Like, we got together, we show that the idea of what story making is, and I think we can also have a good time while we do it.
Yep. Can't add anything to that. Well stated.
And let's get to this again. I love that when we end our comments, we end on some of the most important like comments that we could possibly do. We do this consistently. So here's one from Curtis. Please tell me Ron's Unicron story is true. If so, the full telling of that story must be part of your rewind. Well, Curtis, you're here, and I'm here to tell you something that is very important. That story is as true as the memory of a man who is 44 years old can be when you were 11 years old when that thing happened.
What?
That sounded like a story problem, like some SAT.
Ron, tell the story, Ron. Tell the full version of the story.
Okay. Well, the full story of the version is I got Metroplex when I was like 11 years old for my birthday. And on the box of the Metroplex, there was like a puzzle. And it said, from what I remember, and again, we're talking 33 years ago or something like that, it said, if you solve this puzzle, then you can get Unicron by sending in the proof that you solved the puzzle. So I solved the puzzle, and it was a difficult puzzle. I worked very hard solving that puzzle. And then I sent it in, and I never got my Unicron.
Was it like, question, was it solve the puzzle to be entered in for a chance to win a Unicron, or did they literally give out a Unicron to every person that got this right?
That's why I'm saying I don't have a perfect memory on it. I was young, and in my mind, I was supposed to get that Unicron, and I didn't get that Unicron, but most likely it was something along the lines of your name will be put in a drawing if you solve the puzzle. And I'm sure enough people solved the puzzle, because while in my memory it was a difficult puzzle, it probably wasn't so difficult that someone besides myself could solve it.
Question. We're in a press conference format. Question.
Yes. Ed Greer?
Yeah. Okay. When you solved the puzzle, did it say, be sure to drink your Ovaltine? Was that the answer to the puzzle?
No, it was like numbers and letters that you had to figure out a specific order to. And I eventually found out that I got it right. Because like it said, once you get it right, this will appear. This thing will give you the information. At least what I remember. Again, we're talking 33 years ago, and I have had 2 concussions, broken my wrist, broken my knee, and done a lot of stuff rollerblading. So that memory might not be perfect.
And realize, viewer, that Ron has distributed brain in his limbs, much like an octopus. So those wrist and knee injuries are also affecting the veracity of the story.
Well, I mean, look, my theory is that every time I hit my shoulder, my arm, my wrist, my knee, it shook my brain.
The shockwave goes up like the aftershock of an earthquake.
I mean, I don't know if you've ever fallen off the roof of a building while trying to do a 360, but there are some shockwaves, my friends.
Oh, I bet.
Well, Did you ever get a Unicron later on in life?
No, I didn't.
Well, Ron, go answer your door right now to make your dreams come true.
What if I came back and I had a giant Unicron?
Oh, dude.
We probably just have to end the show like forever right there. We will never top that moment.
Well, there's your answer. It's sort of true and probably not exactly as I remembered. It's probably more what Billy said, where I solved the puzzle and then I was in a drawing with, 2 million other kids who solved the puzzle.
I've been there, man. I remember when I was a kid, I voted to let that rabbit have a bowl of tricks. And I was very upset because I didn't realize it was popular vote and kids are dicks. And he never got that bowl of cereal.
What's like? It's like that. What's the Stanford experiment where they made certain kids prison guards and other kids prisoners, and they just started being total pieces of crap to each other. Yeah, dude.
And they're like, definitely killed Jason Todd. Don't let people vote on things like that.
That was the best thing the public ever did.
Oh my God, Jason Todd should have stayed dead. Can we just talk for 30 minutes about what a horrible character Red Hood is and how you should hate yourself if you like him? I'm gonna shame all of you for your fandom.
Honestly, I just wanted to say one last thing about our Transformers pitch. One thing I enjoyed about it was we really did try to give the fans what they wanted to like an absurd degree, like with the amount of fighting and the fact and the stakes that the fighting had from the different environments they could go to transform into different stuff and be more different toys to all of the stuff with them connecting with humanity and learning. Ron says he doesn't come up with the good ideas. Ron did a 3-minute screed on Jeet Kune Do and its impact on his life. And it ended up in the freaking movie. To Keanu Reeves teaches Jeet Kune Do to Optimus Prime, and that's what makes him be able to win the final battle, because he's not fighting like a robot conscripted to a certain a set of parameters to fail over and over again anymore. He's been freed by actually bonding with one of these species, not parasitically barnacling his way onto them or trying to change it into something to hide from them. Learning from them and having intellectual congress from them enabled him to win a centuries-long war. We did that, okay? So that this ain't no fly-by-night operation, son. We ain't out of a strip mall. This is good stuff. And I just want people to acknowledge it. That was a miracle, and I want you to acknowledge it.
I mean, I said it earlier in the episode. I kind of don't know what the takeaway from this is. It's kind of like if you take your kid to Toys R Us and they throw a fit and you throw them out of there, but then you end up buying the toy for them for Christmas. Like, that's kind of what we did, which is the Do Crew threw a huge fit, and it had to be this. And I guess we kind of owe it to the worser parts of ourselves that it turned out like for the best at the end. Like, the moral of the story ended up definitely blowing up in our faces, but I guess it was either like stick it to the fans and just deliver an absolute piece of crap, be like, see, you can't do this, or it was given to the hate and still deliver. So yeah, look, it's a great pitch. Maybe our message got a little tangled because of that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I just want to remind you guys for follow us all on the socials if you don't know about it. We got Ed Greer, we got Billy Business, we got Producer Bill. I'm Ron Swallow. Thank you for watching and being part of the special community we built here. Be sure to be here next week for another edition of Reboot Rewind.